In today's episode, Katy asks, how applicable is Porter's 5 forces for you in your career or firm? If you don't recall, and for some folks it may have been a little while since business school, if you made it to business school, which is totally fine if you didn't, Porter's 5 forces is a strategic framework to determine the sort of industry rivalry, how competitive is an industry, and how likely is it that your firm, your company, is going to face a lot of pressure from competitors. So let's actually bring up the model here. Here we have Porter's 5 forces. We have it's weirdly structured, but essentially you read it left to right and then top to bottom. So left to right, you have the threat of new entrants, meaning that there's a new company that could come into your space and disrupt you. There's your company in the middle, and then there is, on the other side of that, the threat of substitutes, meaning a company that does what you do but can be substituted in for you. The more there are substitutes, the more likely you are facing commoditization, right? Think about a plumber, right? Plumbing companies, the substitute is pretty obvious. It's any plumber, right? Because for the category as a whole, there's not a whole lot that sets one plumber apart from the other, right? It's all relationship based. Same with new entrants. If the classic case of that was, cars, the taxi industry being disrupted by Uber, right? A new entrant came in and wrecked the marketplace. Then vertically, you have the bargaining power of suppliers, namely how much leverage they have over you for what they supply you, and the bargaining power of buyers, how much pricing pressure a buyer can apply to your company, based on their willingness to squeeze you. A real good example of this one is Bed Bath & Beyond. Nobody shops there unless they have a coupon, right? So people have been so trained by that company basically being in permanent sale mode that they can't do any normal business if they're not sending out like a 30% off coupon. So this framework is a good abstract strategic framework, right? It is something that you can sit down and do as a thought exercise anytime you're doing a major strategic pivot or decision. If you're starting a new company, if you are trying to change the purpose of your company, this is a really good framework. It is good for that annual board strategic retreat or senior executive strategic meeting or whatever. But the challenge with Porter's 5 forces and its use is that because it is so abstract, it is very difficult to quantify, and it's very difficult, therefore, to manage against. Each of these categories, you can make some kind of framework that has some numbers attached to it, right? Threat of new entrants is, number of competitors. How many of them are there, and what is their market share? Threat of substitutes, how comparable are your competitors on features and pricing? And what you'll end up with is sort of a massive spreadsheet that starts to look a lot like a major consulting firm's 2x2 matrix, right? That said, you can't really manage against that because assembling one of those things is a massive, very labor-intensive process, and keeping the data up to date, kind of tough, right? Because again, it's a lot of legwork. The same is true for the bargaining power of suppliers and buyers. Very different types of measurement. And so you can kind of sort of measure Porter's 5 forces, but when it comes to using a strategic framework to measure against on a regular, frequent basis, you're actually much better off with a SWOT analysis, because SWOT analyses allow you to really keep track of a discrete set of data, right? A SWOT analysis for social media is a good way to segment out your data and look at just one channel. SWOT analysis for email, SWOT analysis for search engine optimization, for SEO. That framework will be much more practical to use on a regular basis. So when you're making a major strategic change, Porter's 5 forces is the way to go. When you're trying to manage on a regular basis, use a SWOT analysis instead. I would say with Porter's 5 forces, we used that at the beginning when my partner and I co-founded Trust Insights. Right? We used a variant of it to try and understand how should we position the company, and there were there's always a threat of new entrants in any industry. There really is no threat of substitutes because data science, there's such a limited talent pool that it's not like you can create a massive Goliath overnight. The bargaining power of buyers is relatively low because if buyers have a need, they know they don't have any way to fulfill that need because, again, the talent shortage in the field. And then the bargaining power of suppliers, at least in a service firm, which is what we are, we don't really have suppliers, right? Other than tools and software, and most of what we use is open source, so there is no bargaining power. So it puts us in a very interesting position that has been very advantageous. We do on a fairly regular basis keep an eye on what's happening in the industry, but everything we've seen thus far indicates that the conditions for the creation of our company have gotten better instead of worse, or I should say are more advantageous rather than less advantageous, because there really is no good or bad. So that's the long answer. Porter's Five Forces, good, strategic, abstract. Stick with SWOT analysis for operational stuff, and maybe we'll cover that in another episode. As always, please leave your follow-up comments in the comments box below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.